Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm Bill Whittle. Let's head on over to Twitch and grab our friends over there and see what they have to say, and we'll get this show on the road here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. We're both rolling on both streaming platforms now. We're streaming like the kids, the wacky, nutty kids with their crazy, newfangled ideas. Uh, yeah, so it's Thursday, the 6th of March, and just an, I go to a chiropractor once a month, and that would be tomorrow. This C5 C6 fusion done in my neck back in 1993. I hurt myself in the gym and fused a couple vertebrae in my neck, and sometimes it locks up, and so I go back tomorrow, but I just got off the plane and it's really hurting. I mean, I got off the plane a couple days ago, but that's really killing me. So anyway, yeah, it's in the news. Um, no, I didn't get a tan. Just probably increased probably just increased the saturation a little bit. Um, uh, we just had the Starship Flight 8, which appears to have been a pretty near carbon copy of Starship Flight 7. So they definitely got a problem with that ship Mark II. That's the second time that ship has failed. So let's see. I actually wasn't in Denton. As I said, I wasn't sure about the name. I was actually in Denison, so way up on the almost on in Oklahoma, and had a really fun time. I listened to. I got a rental car, um, and it's about an hour drive north of DFW, I guess, and. So I normally listen to YouTube or something like that um, on a drive, so it's like audiobooks for me. But I was on my way up to Denison, and I found just by accident KKXT, which is a member supported independent station in Dallas. And man, I'll tell you what, I was just gobsmacked. It was just like I've never heard this music before. It's really really cool. And then they'd play another track. I said, I've never heard that before. That's really really cool. And then and they just kept coming and coming and coming and coming and coming, and I couldn't believe it. So it was all brand new indie music, but it was just wicked wicked cool stuff. It was enough to make me want to rewrite some scenes. Dave Big Booty says National Public Bureau Radio. They say they're at National Public Radio, but I didn't hear any NPR. It's a rock and roll station, and they're membership based. So I got the KKXT app as soon as I got home, and it's just the coolest music I've heard in a long time. I mean, every now and then, like every fifth, sixth, seventh song, something like that, they'd play like old Audiovox, or they'd play. I mean, the most popular thing they ever played was Flight of Seagulls. During the time I listened to them, I listened for about 2.5 hours, I guess. Um, but in any event, it was great. And there's a lot of great new music out there. It's just you never get to hear it. So this was, like I said, this is all indie bands, and whoever's doing their programming really knows the cool stuff. As I was just mentioning, I wasn't in Denton. I was in Denison. I mentioned I wasn't 100% sure of Denton when I mentioned it last week. It's actually Denison. That's where the confusion came from. Um, and Denison was fine. Was just a lot of good folks up there, and I listened to a guy who's also speaking, who kind of closed the night. He's got a ministry. I've forgotten his last name. His first name is Jaku, and he does a lot of work with human trafficking and stuff. And man, I did not see the bust of Eisenhower. I know I went right past his birthplace, but uh, the Jaku was talking about human trafficking, and it was unbelievable. You tend to think it's all, Korean or South American kids, but he said no. It's just insane how many American kids are just being trafficked, and boy, it was really a wake up call, and really kind of a sort of a tough way to end the evening. But man, you want to talk about some horror stories? This is going to be the big question. It's going to be whether this lawlessness at the top is going to the sudden application of the law, as we haven't really seen too much of yet. We're still discovering things. But whether or not it trickles down, you know, and I really liked some of those ideas I developed in that Dan Bongino segment. This idea of the difference between law enforcement and crime fighting, and crime fighting is done by like true believers. This guy Jaku was a true believer. He really came in there and just lapped into this audience. I had a fun time because it was nice to be able to celebrate a victory every now and then. But he basically came in and said, if you think that electing the president is going to change all this stuff, you're out of your minds. And I thought, well, he's right. But man, it was brutal stuff. So how much of this lawfulness will trickle down? As I mentioned, I think it's almost like it's not even like the thing changed at the top. It's like law-abiding citizens, reached out and elected this guy, and now they're getting actual law enforcement. So it's almost like to say that Trump is going to enforce the law nationwide is a bit like putting the cart before the horse. I think the desire for law enforcement is what actually got him elected. But it is definitely feeling like a different world. There we go. There's a super chat from Sneed Chuck over there. Came in just as we started rolling on YouTube. Just a thumbs up super chat. So thank you very much for that, Sneed. Yeah, Eric says Q Cash and Dan and Pam crashing the SDNY office of the FBI and grabbing all the mutineers. There's been a couple of setbacks, not many. It's been an amazing ride, but the whole Epstein files, rather, the Einstein files. That'd be funny. Is going to be interesting whether or not anything actually comes of that. I would be very disappointed if it turned out that after all of this hype and the people showing up with their certified copies and all the rest of it, if it turned out, hey, if they destroyed the records, then we start prosecuting the people that destroyed the records, and we start cutting deals so that they can remember some of the records under oath. Because I really want to know. I think as long as the Epstein files remain sealed, it's going to be very hard for people to think that there's not two systems of justice in this country. So that whole big release, that here comes, we're going to release him tomorrow morning, and Cash has gotten a memo from Bondi, and the whole thing is just kind of a fizzle. So I don't know what the latest on that is, or whether they're planning on. They need to clear out that Southern New York office. That's the one thing they need to do. Marisha Dark is. I mentioned this when Trey Gowdy said. He said when Gowdy was looking at, during all of this stuff during the Obama years, Gowdy said he'd rather have evidence of a cover-up than a confession. Presumably, speaking as a prosecutor, because presumably a confession, you could still claim you didn't know you were breaking the law. But if you can prove that you're covering your tracks, then not only does it show your guilt, it also shows you're aware of guilt. So Oh, well, the guys running the SDNY office stepped down. Well, I want him to step all the way down into prison. Is where I want him to step down to. And I know we it takes time to bring cases, and I've been saying it takes time. You got to investigate them. You got to bring charges, all this other stuff. But this business of, well, they resigned, and so I guess that's the end of that. It's like, no, no, I'm not interested in them. Yeah, in them resigning. Lady Hawk, exactly. I want them in orange jumpsuits, and and I don't know. I really want to see some. I want to see some prison time for some people somewhere. Uh, but again, we're not even 2 months into the presidency, and it takes a while, like I said, to bring charges and stuff. So we'll see. Um, I think SDNY in this case is the Southern District of New York. I think that's what it might be referring to. It's the FBI office. Yep. Looks like I got it right. It's the FBI office that has been known to be corrupt for a number of reasons, and has been, you know, I think that was the office that was complicit in a lot of the Steele dossier stuff, and um, those bastards. There's a friend, Wesley Bruce, with the super chat, says people may have started singing and naming others, and that can slow things down. Yes, yes. So I'm thinking, you know, send a few of them to the stake to set an example for the others. Yes, you heard me. To the stake. And I don't mean the steak dinner. They've been stealing those things. Somebody sent me my brother actually sent me a Facebook thing that outlined all of the money that Chelsea Clinton has, and it just makes my blood boil. Just makes my blood boil. But we'll see. Anyway, enough of that, I guess. I'm going to jump into the questions pretty quick here, because there is something. Let me. I should have had this ready. Hang on one second. It's a little favor, but you may appreciate it. Give me 1 second to find. It's got to do with NATCA. Hang on a second. She has started a YouTube channel, believe it or not. Hey, there it is. Cool. Oh, she's got some shorts up. Fantastic. So I actually have a bunch to do with this. This would just be just consider this a favor. But she's been working on this for a while. So Natasha is just an uncommonly talented person. She'd been drawing a lot when she was a little girl, and then when she, I don't know, this has got to be 4 or 5 years ago now. When she got here, yeah, Brian, it was a great speech. Just let me get this out, and we'll take some questions here. When she got here, I got her painting supply. She'd never painted before. Then she starts turning out these incredible paintings, and then she started making jewelry. So she has incredible jewelry, and putting jewelry on clothes and all the rest of that stuff. So if I could just ask a favor of you guys here, I'm going to put the link to her new YouTube page in. And what she's started doing is she started playing around with AI music for meditation and to help people sleep. So that'd be two of us, two family household, a two-person household in the helping you go to sleep business. So this kind of music may not be everybody's cup of tea. In fact, it may not be really anybody's cup of tea, but it is Hang on. Oh, and I just got a text. Somebody's watching the show. She's still uploading 2 videos. Well, I've already mentioned it, and I talked to you about it last night, honey. So we're going to go with the 4 that are there. So I'm going to put a link in, and if you can just sample it. So it's really, it's just it's mood music. It's meditation music, and it's designed to help her sleep. She's had a hard time sleeping sometimes, and found some of these, 7 or 8 hours of just, rain in the forest and stuff. So she picked up this this AI music software, and as usual with her painting and the jewelry and everything else, just this stuff starts coming out. It's just fantastic. So let me go ahead and put this into the comment sections for both of them, and if you could just go over there and click on that subscribe button, would be really great. I helped her with the she selected the videos. It's just a loop. It's an ongoing loop, so the video doesn't change. But we've got 6 of them done, and she's got 4 of them uploaded, and she's uploading 2 more now. And she said she wanted to wait till 5, but I asked her earlier today if I could mention it, or last night if I could mention it. So it's called A Deep Relaxation by Natalia Melnikova, which is her maiden name and kind of her professional name. So here comes the link, and if you're able to go over there, you can, well, I'll just play one here real quick. Hang on. Now, you got to understand, you really need to hear these things with, especially with headphones, are really nice, but this is the kind of music. You got to understand, you really need, yep. Really need to hear these things with, especially with headphones, are really nice, but this is the kind of music. Try a couple of the others real quick. Sorry. And they really develop and grow. I'm just going to do all 4. She's got 2 more, and we're going to do another one tonight. That'll be 7. She's got 50 ready to go. It's just a question of me. Skip ahead here on the same one. And last one, and then we'll get on with the show. But I just do love them, and thank you for the signups. went from 4 subscribers to 20 something or whatever. It's a good start, and I'll put the link on the recorded version, because that usually gets about 2,000 views or something. And thank you very much for signing up. I might go back and throw the link in a little bit later. Thank you for subscribing, those of you, and thank you for the very kind words. So that's Natasha's stuff. She just somebody just handed her this AI music generator, and she just dug in there, and the next thing you know, it's like, honey, where'd this stuff come from? So it's actually great. I should pin the post on YouTube. Thank you, Marusha. I will do that, because she's coming in when the show's over, and we're gonna put up another one. She's got 2 others that haven't been posted yet. She's got one called Desert that we did last. It's really, really cool. She gets into saxophone and all kinds of stuff. So she's an astonishing person, and just so proud of her. And thank you all very much for the subscriptions. Roadrunner wants to know, is her name Natasha or Natalia? It's Natalia. Natalia Whittle is her legal name, but Natalia Melnikova is her professional name. She became really well known as a photographer under that name, and I just want to get, she does sound bowls, which is also fairly amazing. Just hours of these meditation things, and I just I would really like to see her art up on Etsy, and I think the most I think personally the most so Natasha is kind of a nickname for Natalia, and she decorates clothes and paints on like paints designs on jean jackets and stuff, denim jackets for women. It's killer, man. It's absolutely fantastic. So it's like living next to an art factory. It's not just an art gallery, it's an art factory. It's just everything else just keeps, stuff just keeps coming out of there. And it's just, just amazing, really. So thank you very much for all of you who subscribed, and it's a nice launch, and she's going to be putting up an awful lot of stuff. That's the end of my going home at night, though. I'll usually finish here around 7 or 8, and it takes us about an hour, maybe 90 minutes for us to put up a new one, I'd guess, something like that. So there you go. Anyway, moving on to the show. Yes, I'll be Boris Melnikova. That's going to be my new nom de plume. Yeah, people are talking about a Mars landing in the Twitch stream. Mars is in an advantageous position for really the only way to get there right now, given how limited our thrust is. And that is that's every 2 years. So it's kind of as you want to launch, as we're on the inside track of Mars. Obviously, Mars's year is about 2 years, 2 Earth years approximately. And as we're starting to catch up to Mars, that's when you want to heave that thing out there, so the thing starts going faster and faster. And as it gets up to the this is called a Hohmann transfer orbit. As it starts to reach the orbit of Mars, it slows down, because one of the qualities of orbital mechanics is the closer to the center of the orbit, the faster it goes. So as it kind of reaches its way out there, it slows down. If you time this just right, it slows down just as Mars is approaching, and you get this nice little thing. 28 months. Okay, great. Yeah. So it's he is saying he wants to send 5 Starships in 26. We've had 2 failures. The thing that you get so used to SpaceX's success and its incredible success, that when you see back-to-back failures like the one we saw with Flight 7 and 8, both pretty much mirror images of each other. The booster is performing perfectly. They've made 3 catch attempts with 3 successes. It looks easy now. And he's he's lost the second stage of the ship has lost engines and tumbled out of control twice. So I'm sure it happened for a different reason. He just needs to up the pace of the launches, which he'll do. How this man functions is beyond me, and I got to tell you, I saw him. It really made me actually kind of physically ill. You know, just a little bit sick to see him on Rogan, and he was talking about some of these money paths, and he was just recently on Rogan, and he was saying when you find out how these politicians really enrich themselves, it'll blow your mind. He says, boy, I'm paraphrasing. This is what I remember him saying. He said they wanted to kill me before, but now, you know, I mean, I'm going to get assassinated. I mean, he said that verbatim, and he said it a couple times. And Rogan said, "What you mean when people find out how this money thing really works?" And Elon actually got flustered, like, yeah, yeah. And Rogan said, "Well, how does it work?" He says, "Well, I mean, they're gonna want me dead. They're really they really want me dead." And it just made me, sad, and it made me appreciate the courage that he has, and Donald Trump, and all, I mean, guys like Pete Hegseth, and they all become targets, no question about that. But Donald Trump and Elon Musk have become two of the most hated people in the country. And if something were to happen to him, I just will put this out there for those dark forces that are constantly talking about, oh, we have to get Elon, we have to get Trump. If Elon Musk or Donald Trump should fall down a flight of stairs, you are not gonna want the people we replace them with. Because if something should happen to either one of those two men, if you think that means we're going to back off, if something happens to either one of those two men intentionally, then it's jihad. Then it's no longer a crusade. It's jihad. There are. I frankly don't know how they deal with. I guess just like everything else. I guess like everything else, it's something that humans adapt to. I was going to say the most hated people in the world. The only thing that and frankly, the only reason they're still alive, to be honest with you, is that Trump has now that we've got the Secret Service A-team on the job guarding the number one target. The Secret Service is very, very effective, and Musk has. It's a good thing he's the richest man in the world, because I imagine his security. It's actually an interesting philosophical question. Trying to figure out whether Elon has better security than Trump. They both have superb security, and Murshidak's got a quote. I think it's got to be from 300, right? If they kill me, Leonidas talking. If they kill me, all of Sparta goes to war. Pray that they're that stupid. Pray we're that lucky. So in any event, the world would continue without them. But I'm speaking for myself here. If they have, because the Democrats have not only allowed this level of rhetoric, they've encouraged it. When you've got a guy at, it wasn't the State of the Union address, at the President's address to the nation on Tuesday, which was a out of the park hit. Obviously, a number of people have been mentioning that in the comment section. When you've got a guy waving a cane, which apparently he didn't need to be escorted out of the building, waving a cane at the President of the United States and shouting in the middle of a speech like that, there's going to have to come a point where these people are held responsible for the he's a Nazi, he's a fascist, it's the end of our democracy, it's the end of the country. Um, I don't believe that that you can hold somebody responsible for somebody else's actions, not legally responsible anyway, but morally responsible. And I don't know. I don't know. They need to cool things down, and Elon, he didn't need this. Neither did Trump. They're both billionaires. They both could have gone their own way and had perfectly happy lives. That's the fundamental reason I trust them both. And when I say I trust them, that means I trust them. I trust them much more than I trust other politicians. But I don't completely trust anybody anymore. Yeah, Al Green. He needs to be sanctioned and censored and all the rest of it. Not that it's going to matter to him. Yeah, Mercy says Trump stopped just short of telling the Dems their blood is on your hands with regards to the deaths under Biden's term of the illegal aliens and Ukraine and the Middle East and the gentleman whose name I've forgotten who was killed in Butler as a result of the assassination attempt. So anyway, he was censored. Okay, good. He was censored. Now he needs to be censored. Okay. He's he's what they are, man. He's what they are. Yeah, they're both losing. When Donald Trump and Elon Musk start doing work for the government, they start, instead of gaining millions and millions of dollars, Corey Compatore, thank you. Instead of gaining millions and millions of dollars mysteriously, they end up losing millions and millions or billions of dollars. Yeah, so, all right. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get on to questions and see if we can find ourselves a little better mood here. Okay. And I got to remember to pin this link with Natasha, and I will certainly do that. So let's see. I remember. Richard Kelch in YouTube saying that there's now talk of Green's expulsion because of his behavior at his censor meeting. Did he burnish a Tommy gun at his censor meeting? And Dude McMahon says 76% approval rating. I've never heard of a 76% approval rating in American politics. That's amazing. The most important thing is to and the most fun thing is to watch the momentum increasing instead of decreasing, and the political power increasing rather than decreasing. There's some talk about the Democratic Party essentially just collapsing. I don't think that's really going to come to that, but they sure do look lost. Steve Turley was saying that there are predictable patterns, graphable patterns of how movements become extinct. Like if you look at the Occupy Wall Street movement, for example, there's this giant burst of excitement, and then participation goes down. Then there's lack of new leadership, and it's all kind of predictable. Somebody's saying the volume's a little low. Let me see. I don't know if that helps. Let me look at the YouTube side. I can boost it a little bit, I guess. I'll just bring the mic a little closer. Don't want to distort things. Yeah, I do hope they go the way of the Whigs, and that'd be a something, wouldn't it? Be something to say when you make the pearly gates, as all of us will, and none of them will, because we're not ideologues after all. It would be that'd be something to see. You say, yeah, I lived through the suicide of the Democratic Party. Okay, Mike is good, great. Let's see what we got. That's an interesting. I just discovered something about my website here. I think it's it seems to be much slower once you're logged in. Now that I don't know how that makes sense. It's definitely better. I spent some money on getting this thing buffed up a little bit. But anyway, here's our Thursday stream from curated by Marusha Dark. Thank you very much, Marusha. That'd be great. Appreciate all this. Let's see what we got. We got a Marusha Dark, Guy Balo, Road Rider, Bob Neef, Jacob Belchak, Capital G Geek, George Freeland, Eric Blake, Ray Juarez, another Marusha Dark. Okay, I think we can do those. Richard Kelch says website JavaScript code may have a memory leak. I'm going to write that down. And I'm going to experiment with that because I did pay money to have this thing optimized, and it certainly seems a little better, but not much better. But that's why it looks so fast on Firefox, because I'm not logged in on Firefox, and so I will have a look at that, because that shouldn't really make a difference, I wouldn't think. But that's a good piece of knowledge, and thanks for the heads up on that, Richard. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Marusha Dark, topic, The Flash. Bill, here's something I thought of while watching Scott's segment today when you mentioned Trump's not acting like he has 4 years but 18 months, and it's not something I've heard anyone else talk about. Yes, when I was, Jaku I was mentioning has the ear of several people on Trump's inner circle, and he said they're not acting, they never plan they're not looking at having 4 years to get this done. They're not looking at 2 years to get this done. They figure they got 18 months to get this done. So we'll see. Anyway, so back to Marusha. Let's suppose the worst should happen and the GOP loses both the midterms and the next presidential election. The speed at which Trump is moving and just the sheer amount of work he's doing means that even if no legislation passes, and he only gets executive level stuff done, such it can all be undone by the next Democratic POTUS, they're never going to outwork him. There's just too much for them to undo already. Trump can undo all of Biden's actions in under a week, and they won't have the same sense of urgency to drive them to do it, even if they wanted to, meaning that for the first time in as long as I can remember, Trump will leave office having made a permanent change to our government, one that can't just be overturned with the stroke of a pen. It would take them at least 2 terms just to break even. And I'd argue that it's a permanent change for the better, and that's just within his mere executive powers, let alone the cultural stuff. Of course, it's highly likely that the worst won't happen. Far from it, that Vance will pick up where he left off, keep the momentum going. And from what I've seen, he's a lot better at communicating patience and nuance than Trump. Yes, he's much, much better, which makes him an even more dangerous to Democrats than rhinos. Any thoughts? Yeah, let me work this backwards. J.D. Vance is going to be, I believe he'll be the next president, and I think he's going to be an incredible president. J.D. Vance has a gentleness and certainly his backstory. And not only does he have a gentleness that is owned by Vance, he also doesn't have any of Trump's negatives, and those are not quite the same thing. Vance has got a lot of positives, and he has none of Trump's negatives. I think Vance would do much better in an election once people get to know him. Although it had to be Trump. There's no way. This is Donald Trump. Donald Trump owns this. This reinvention of the government is him. Selecting Vance is him. All of this preparation that was done is him. And Trump deserves all of the credit for it. But I think that I can't think of a better case of succession, except for maybe Coolidge, where I just think we're looking. I just think we're looking really great. Um, as far as the the first stuff goes, the fact that he's just doing so much. It's not just that he's doing so much, Marisha. I think it's bigger than that. Um, it's that what he. It's really a classic case of none of this can be unseen anymore. None of this can be covered up anymore. We mentioned a few minutes ago about Elon Musk and so on. Doge is a government department. It's not Elon Musk's personal hobby. He's already hired 100 of the brightest people in the country. Those guys are on a mission. All of this stuff is going to get uncovered. Unlike Trump number one, term one, we've got the entire Republican Party is now behind him solidly. I was very impressed with the Speaker of the House during Trump's speech. I've been impressed with Mike a lot lately. So you can't put this back. You can't put this toothpaste back in the tube. It's out now, and everybody in America knows it. We still don't know the full scale of it. I've said before, I think it was definitely strategy or strategery. Turns out, by the way, just as a quick parenthetical, as a term ascribed to George Bush, and apparently, I think I saw heard Will Ferrell talking about his talk he had with George Bush, and Bush apparently said to Farrell, "Man, I can't believe I was stupid enough to say strategery." And Farrell said, "You never did say strategery. I said strategery." And even George Bush thought he'd said it. But it can't be undone. It can't be unseen. It can't be you can't cover it back up. Lord Bio says, I saw someone allude to the current situation as the band and yearbook kids being swirled by the football team chess club alliance. These guys are they're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to see a lot of stuff. Peter Rossi just said, "I'm going to Mars," and that was my dream, Peter. I thought I was going to Mars too, except I thought so in 1975. And you've actually got a chance to do it. I'd be happy if I could get into orbit, to be honest with you. Or in fact, not even orbit. I'll just take anything above the Kármán line. I'd be happy with a Blue Origin trip. Anyway, it's not the point I'm trying to make and make repeatedly, not just with this. I've said it many times. This is no longer dependent on Trump. This is not something that Trump has to do. Trump has cut the Gordian knot, and now everything is unraveling. And whether he continues, he doesn't have to keep hacking at it. He's done what he needs to do, and that's the main thing. So, on some level, I actually have to stop and grab myself by the collar sometimes, because now I'm starting to look for ways, not in a negative way. I'm just starting to. I'm looking at, like I would like pre-flight an airplane. Where are the failure modes? What can fail? And honestly, things are looking so good. It's hard to imagine. In fact, it's impossible to imagine going back to the world that the left has had. I don't see any scenario where that's true. They don't have the weapons that they used to have. They don't have the mass media. They don't have the news media. They don't have I was doing the speaking event on Monday night in Denison, Texas, and the subject of the pop culture came up, and I said, the Oscars are coming up. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. They were yesterday. Were the Oscars yesterday? And everybody said, well, we think so. And they were, as usual, just it's not there anymore. There are no movie stars anymore, and even the old ones are just old movie stars that nobody cares about. Not only do they not care about it, people. If I had a choice of being endorsed by George Clooney or no endorsement, I'd take the no endorsement. I actually think they really hurt. Eric says, please tell me that there's a recording of your speech. That one wasn't recorded. It was they were great people, and it was just the whole night was just kind of a low energy night, and when you're on when you're doing a live show of any kind, whether you're a musician or on stage, or I'm sure it's true for magicians as well, it's just you know, when you got a fairly low energy crowd, it's then it just kind of becomes a little bit more mechanical. So I got plenty of stuff online with those things, and I'm gonna be working on that golden age thing. We've got a question that's along these lines too. So yeah, all I'm trying to say is I always take these things very seriously, and I want to come out of there with the people being happy, and they certainly seem to be happy. But there was nothing that you haven't heard on the Stratosphere Lounge. Just put it that way. So there we go. So yeah, but anyway, back to the questions. Marusha, yeah, he is moving so fast that they're I get your point. It's an interesting point. He is moving so fast that Democrats by their nature and government officials by their nature are too slow and too ossified and too lazy to catch him, even if they had the chance starting in 4 years. Because we could lose the midterm elections, and we still could do the executive branch. So we've got 4 years of executive orders. We don't have 4 years of legislation. We might, but thank you, Timothy. But we might, and I suspect we probably will. I think we're going to gain in the midterms, although it's so far away still, it's still early. But even if we didn't, we've got 4 years of executive orders, and then come 2028, there's usually a sign. If you look at the history of standout politicians, let's take two of them, for example. Let's take Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama, the opposing, the matter and antimatter saints of the left and the right. Reagan was elected in 1980, but Reagan was front and center in 1976. In the 76 election. Thank you, John, for another $100 super chat as usual. I'll come back to thanking you, but let me just stay on this train of thought. But thank you so much again, as always. So Reagan in 76 ran against Ford and damn near took the nomination. There was actually a period of a couple hours there where there was almost a talk about a co-presidency. But Reagan was there a full cycle before he was elected. Obama very famously made that speech at the DNC convention in 2004 when Kerry ran against Bush, and he was front and center, and everybody could see these were the coming guys. There is nobody on the Democratic side. There actual serious talk about trotting out Tim Walz again and Kamala Harris, and they don't have a bench. And they don't have any leaders. There's no name a standout member of the Democratic Party. All the Democratic Party leaders are people like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren. Octogenarians, and they're the only people they've got that are relatively young are people like AOC and Crockett, who are barking mad lunatics. So I'm telling you, it looks tremendous. Thank you very much, Roadrunner Super Chat, $20 for the website Speed Fund. Thank you very much. Keep up the great work, he says. I really appreciate it. And John Eden, again, no matter how many times I say so, I worry that you're going to get tired of me thanking you, and I just never will. It's just incredible what you do for this show and for all of us, and we're very, 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 very grateful. We, on the other hand, have a tremendous bench. Everybody is just crazy young. Wesley Bruce with the super chat. If USAID was funding in half of the DNC's campaign, they may not be able to run people in 2026. This was why I did that hot mic I don't remember if it was a right angle. No more headwinds, right? We've been funding our own opposition. Nobody seems to be taking that into account. We've been funding our own opposition. And when that happens, and we're going to find out. But man, I'm feeling really good on a real clear-eyed, hard-nosed look at the way things are sitting. I'm feeling really, really, really good, really good. Okay, moving on. Guy Balo. Greetings, Bill. Hello, Guy. With the Democratic Party being the oldest political party in America, when did they go from having a different idea of what's best for America and Americans to an outright hatred of America and all it stands for? This happened, the Democratic Party began to reflect these changes in the 60s. The philosophical underpinnings go back further. Just the brief form, since it's important that people know this. I've mentioned this several times, obviously, but you're going to have to hear it again. I'll make it as fast as I can. After World War I, Marxists got together and wondered why, if there was this gigantic, enormous, horrific struggle, why did the workers of the world not unite and simply walk away from the war? Why did German Marxists go to war for Germany and British Marxists go to war for Britain when they were supposed to all get together and fight against this capitalist system that was murdering millions of people, and so on and so on and so on? And they figured out that capitalism was making people so rich that these idiots were going to continue to put off the Marxist revolution. So they realized that they had to change their strategy, and instead of Marxism coming in through economics, coming in through the workers let them down. The workers were, having cars and indoor plumbing in America and around the rest of the world. So the workers started looking out for their own self-interest, and these Marxists said, well, we've got to do something so that we can control the world. And so they decided to change strategies, and they came up with what became known as critical theory. These are guys like Gramsci, and strangely enough, one of the leaders of these Marxists in the Marxist Frankfurt School was a guy named Horkheimer. I hope it was no relation. I know it wasn't Jack Horkheimer, but nevertheless. Let me just deal with this because it's a really interesting point. Trinity Waters says with a super chat, notice the absence of astroturfing since Doge started choking off the dollars. I've noticed that. Have you noticed how weak the counter protests are, the street protests? There looks like there's 30 people out there now. This is what I'm talking about when I say we've been funding our own opposition. Anyway, real quick, back to this goes to the question. So the Marxists got out of Germany in the 30s, and they moved to Columbia University, where they set up the Frankfurt School, and they began to, in the safety of America, which took them in and shielded them from Nazi Germany, which was after all of them for being communists and some of them for being Jews. They started working on figuring out how to destroy America because they saw America and American freedom and prosperity. And they said this very specifically, not just the material things. They said that America is what is stopping Marxism from coming into the world. And it's not just the fact that Americans are rich and powerful. They said that the main reason why America is such a threat to Marxism was the moral fiber of America. They specifically said if we're going to bring Marxism to the world, which means them, right? They're Marxists. So in a Marxist revolution, they go from being nobodies to being the guys who are making literal life into take those people up against the wall. So they realized that it was America's moral culture. Peter Rossi said paperclip. This has nothing to do with Operation Paperclip, if that's what you're talking about. Nothing. Operation Paperclip brought German scientists over after World War II, not after World War I, and those German scientists in Operation Paperclip, who went on to help among whom was Werner von Braun. But those German scientists became American citizens and great patriots. They put us on the moon. And Bert Rutan has spent many hours talking with me about the Germans that worked in Huntsville, Alabama, with von Braun. And I don't want to. I'm not accusing you of this, but they were the opposite of the Marxists that came to the Frankfurt School. They were patriotic. They were cultural. They came to America and they started setting up operas as well as baseball teams, and they were just. Bert has spent a fair amount of time with them, and they were terrific guys and real patriots and did an awful lot for this country in their second half of their lives. So I just want that out of the way. Anyway. Once he got to America, then you start getting the second generation of these Marxists, and you start getting into guys like Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, and basically, I mean, Hillary Clinton apparently came from a relatively conservative household, but when she went to college, she got exposed to these ideas, and she wrote her thesis on Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky's book Rules for Radicals was the blueprint on how to defeat America politically. How do you defeat free people politically? Well, you hold them to their own rules, which means that if you believe in morality, then you make them. If they can't live up to their own standards of morality, every time there's a moral lapse on the part of a Republican or a conservative, that not only becomes a moral lapse, it also becomes hypocrisy, and you have to. And then the Alinsky would say, then you basically say this man believes in nothing because he can't live up to his own principles. You get the whole idea, right? So this infection was established at Columbia University, and they started going after journalism students. That's who they started recruiting. The first people they started recruiting were journalism students. So they took over the journalist department. If you want to know when things started, I can give you an actual date. When things, I can't give you the month, but I can give you the year. In 1964, student radicals took over the law library at Yale University, and the faculty of Yale didn't arrest these kids. They sided with them because they had always been left-wingers. At 1964, the faculty of Yale were what were known as red diaper babies. These were kids who were raised as communists in the 30s by immigrants, mostly from Russia and Germany, who were dyed-in-the-wool Marxists. David Horowitz is one of them. He openly says so. He says his parents used to walk him down the streets of New York and would talk about how we're going to rename Broadway is going to be Lennon Avenue, and and Madison Avenue is going to be Rosa Luxemburg, and all of that stuff. So this underground of communists and Marxists lived in this country, and one of the, there's that old that line, this great line, the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled was convincing people that he didn't exist, and that's what the communists did. So when people started going after communists during the Red Scares in the 1950s and the communist so-called witch hunts and McCarthy and stuff, the bottom line is McCarthy was right. He was a jackass. He was a horrible person, but he was right. There really were just tons and tons and tons of communists in the government, and the communists at the time screamed and yelled, no, Alger Hiss isn't a communist. No, the Rosenbergs didn't spy on the atomic bomb, and it goes on. It turns out, no, it was all true. It was all true. Castellan says McCarthy didn't go far enough. The country should have picked up this thing, but they didn't. So then in the 60s, you start seeing all of these counterculture movies where, and they're fully aware of this. People like Jane Fonda married Tom, what's his name? Not Harmon. Um, the little commie bastard, Hayden. Um, and they got in there and they started to undermine the culture by making heroes into the bad guys and making anti-heroes, criminals, into the heroes. Two perfect examples of this are Easy Rider and and most especially the one I know better than I only saw Easy Rider once, I think, and Bonnie and Clyde. So Bonnie and Clyde, you've got two of the best looking people in the world who are romanticized as the heroes, and that the law enforcement, basically law enforcement in Bonnie and Clyde are the squares, right? If you look at Bonnie and Clyde, the law enforcement guys, we got a lot of super chats coming in. I'll back up and get those later. Law enforcement were the squares. The the cool kids, the hip kids, were the gangsters, and they romanticized Bonnie and Clyde, who were two murderers, multiple murderers, and turned them into folk heroes. And we started to see more and more and more of this. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid has overtures of that. It's not nearly as obnoxious about it, but nevertheless. So you start getting into the counterculture. Now, I've said I'm going to keep story mechanics non-political, and I'm going to, but somebody on the show suggested it'd be great to do a political segment and keep it as members-only content at BillWhittle.com, and I'm going to do that. And one of the people who arrived in Hollywood just came out of nowhere and was heavily recruited by these communists was John Voight. He's a 6'4" blonde Adonis, and smashes into the pop culture. And guys like Hayden and Fonda realized that if they could get John Voight, who was the all-American boy, John Voight was the golden child. I'm not accusing Dustin Hoffman of this as an actor, but the communists tended to be Dustin Hoffmans, like Tom Hayden, just kind of measly little bastards, just weasels, kind of like the Ratso Rizzo kind of character. When Johnny Voight came along, they said, "My God, we've got the all-American boy here. We've got a Boy Scout. If we can get him working for us, then we're golden." And John said, "Sure enough, for a year or two there, I bought into the whole thing. They worked me hard. They really, really recruited me hard. Everybody was just telling him about all these horrible, evil things about America that he didn't know, but they didn't get. Well, Barbara Denby beat me to the exact sentence. They didn't get Voight. They didn't get him. He had too much integrity for them, and he didn't want to sell his soul for it. And I'll tell you who else didn't want to sell his soul for it, and that's the guy who was in a movie with John Voight and gave a performance that eclipsed John Voight's performance, which is not easy to do, and that's Rick Schroeder. Rick Schroeder was offered the keys to the Golden Sin Palace, and he's also an all-American guy that they wanted, and Hollywood went after him real hard too. The Hollywood sex and money and fame machine, and Rick Schroeder had enough character to turn him down. John Voight, I think mostly the champ. Ricky Schroeder's performance in The Champ is supernatural. It's impossible to believe that a child could do that. And Rick Schroeder's paid a very, very very high price for turning down the Hollywood sin machine. And I can give you another person who's also turned them down, and that is Brendan Fraser, who I admire very much, who's just a very big-souled guy. SOULED, not SOLD. Anyway, so this rot starts in the 60s. It starts with the journalism school, because if you've got left-wing journalists like Woodward and Bernstein, you can bring down a president. And if you've got journalist reporters then go on to become journalist editors at newspapers, then you get the left-wing message out to the people, and any information about left-wing wrongdoing is swallowed up by the newspapers. So this is basically how it worked. And by the time you get to Obama, you've got this entire mechanism in place in terms of the mainstream media to make everything that Obama tried to do, all of these Marxist programs like Obamacare, the American people hear nothing about how wonderful it is, and anybody who opposes it is a racist, and all of this stuff goes on and on and on and on and on, and none of it matters anymore. The mainstream media is no longer the mainstream media. It's now just, I just call it the legacy media now. Nobody watches them. Any conservative pundit worth their salt gets more views than CNN gets it at 6 o'clock news. So they don't have the culture anymore. They don't have. It's not that they don't. They still technically own the machine of the pop culture, and things like Snow White get produced, but nobody cares. Nobody's buying it anymore. That's the main thing, because it's anti-human. Richard Burton mentions Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood was never sold. Tom Selleck, Andrew DeLay says, never sold. Gary Sinise, never sold out. I'll give you a whole bunch of other names. Adam Baldwin, not be confused with Alec Baldwin, never sold out. And many of these people got to be friends of mine because I was telling the story of how Hollywood got to be the way that they were. So that's basically it. Kurt Russell is a conservative. Clint Eastwood is a force of nature. Clint Eastwood, I've had a chance to speak to him on a couple of occasions briefly. And Robert Duvall as well. God bless Robert Duvall. They're just an amazing actor. Clint Eastwood is, even in the and I haven't spoken to him very often or know him particularly well, because I don't think anybody except for one or two people really knows Clint Eastwood very well. But I will say this about Clint: even in casual conversations with Clint Eastwood, you can tell that you are talking to somebody who has no F's left to give. He is imperturbable. Nothing affects. It's just a really, really cool thing to see. P7 2017 says, "What about Dreyfus?" I think Dreyfus was a leftist who had enough of a conscience to see which way the left was going and just started asking some serious questions. Dennis Quaid is a rock solid conservative and a great guy. I don't know about Hackman. You got to be careful, because so many times the kind of characters that actors play make you think you know the actor, but it's not always true. I'd be surprised if Hackman was a left wing. I'd be surprised, but then again, I wouldn't be that surprised. But take like Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin's made a living playing really tough conservative characters, and he's a complete lunatic. The first example of this that I was aware of consciously was Ed Asner. I remember it was one of the first things I ever wrote back during the eject days, and I remember saying, Ed Asner played Lou Grant, and Lou Grant would kick Ed Asner's ass. Lou Grant would kick Ed Asner's ass. So, got to be careful about that. Anyway, let me scroll past these super chats that I just missed here. Got one from John saying, "Your political correctness afterburner is one of the great video of all time." Thank you so much. Thank you. Your scripted videos are uniquely persuasive and educational. You have a genuinely unique rhetorical style. Please do more of those. We've got a question about that coming up. Thank you very much for that. Wesley Bruce again. Pro-German State Department people blocked von Braun from coming to the U.S. in the mid-1930s. Goddard sponsored him. I did not know that. That's good to know. Logan Darklighter has a super chat saying, truly sad on the space channels following the 8th Starship test. 1/3 of the comments are rejoicing in the failure because now they hate Elon Musk that much. 2 years ago, they were fanboys. They truly are part of a cult. Okay. Well, I saw, I was watching the What About It live stream with Felix, and I came in, and just as I came in, Felix was saying, so look, going to Mars and becoming an interplanetary species is more important than politics. So apparently he's getting that too. Good. I say good, you know. How can, I could not have imagined a world where we're the cool guys, but we're the cool guys. We're going to Mars. We're driving fast cars. We're boring tunnels under the ocean. We're gonna develop nuclear power plants. We're gonna do all of this other stuff. And you lefties can sit there in your mud huts and talk about the Guatemalan water snake and wave your pride flags and all of the things that you're taking with you. I'm very, very reluctant to say things like this because first of all, I don't want to jinx things, and secondly, you never know what's going to happen. But it really, really has beginning to feel like they are the ones that are on the wrong side of history. That wokeism is a mental illness and will be looked at as one of the many cases of extraordinary popular delusions and the madness of crowds. So there you go. And then Assassin of the Gray with a super chat says, the second greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing an Arab murdering psychopath he was the Archangel Gabriel with the final word of God. I just finished rereading a biography of Muhammad on this trip, and all I have to say about that is that it's amazing how solicitous Allah is about his prophet. If Muhammad wanted to marry his daughter-in-law, then all of a sudden there'd be a revelation saying that it is good for a man to marry his daughter-in-law. If Allah wanted, if Muhammad wanted something, next thing you know, there would be another revelation in another surah in the Quran, allowing just exactly what it was that Muhammad wanted at the time. And even if it contradicted other stuff. So, yeah, I hear you, brother. And the battles that Muhammad, he was a warrior, obviously, as well. But these battles, if you look at all of the battles that Muhammad was a part of, that he either generaled or actually physically fought in, it turns out that none of them are. It's not that they're not in history. I'm not trying to say that they're invented. They just look like the kind of minor skirmishes that none of them are. It's not like he's Scipio Africanus or Hannibal or Patton or Guderian or Rommel or anything, you know. So anyway, enough of that little sideline. Steve Collins wants to know any what we saw news. No, and I have submitted a proposal at the end of January, and I have not heard back from him yet. So we'll see. Back to the questions. Road Rider. Your latest hot mic was one of your best. Thank you. You're on a roll. Do more. Cut back to 2 Stratosphere lounges and 2 TSLs per month. Stratosphere studios and 2 TSLs per month, and use that time to make more hot mics. I'm hoping I don't have to do that. I'm not planning on cutting back these things. It's this content is for the hardcore, which we are down to now. Our membership is really down to the hardcore of the hardcore. And the last thing I want to do is offer, less for them. But I have been saying from the beginning that these hot mics were supposed to be much, much more frequent and much more thank you, Marcia, and much more rapid fire. I did two in the space of 5 days, I think, with Dan Bongino, and then the Churchill one. I kind of have a question for the comment section actually about that. The last one, the Churchill one, I was reading pretty much the whole time, and I feel like that is kind of flat. Did anybody else get the sense that or does anybody else have a problem with that? Because that one, the Churchill one, was essentially just written, and I'm just wondering if yeah, Don Vicker says make it more pithy too. I can this last one, truthfully, one of the reasons why it took me so long to fix the audio on the backstage show and so on was this last one. I did the hot mic, and then I was here in the morning at the studio, and I hit upload to YouTube, and then I ran down the stairs and got in the Uber for the airport, and I did the all of the description and the posting in the car on the way to the airport. That's how tight that one was. So, thank you, Mike. It's Mike Churchill. It's very kind. Yeah, I sometimes I've got a lot to say, and this one, there was just so much data, I just wanted to look at it. I went straight into the camera, and when I saw it, I thought, that's a lot better than I thought it was. It wasn't a teleprompter, but I kept the text line right where the lens is, and I could see my eyes moving a little bit, but that happens on a prompter too. So yes, so they're going to be more hot mics, Road Rider, and I plan to not do it, not cut the Stratosphere shows. He goes on with the question is, will you take any hot mic intro gag submissions? No hat tip necessary. Hot Mike couldn't make it today, as you all know just how much Hot Mike loves his handsome face. It's understandable. He's stuck in a maze of mirrors he found in a traveling carnival funhouse. He's been there for 2 days and refuses to come out. Muffled shouts were heard from inside, something to the effect of, "It's so beautiful." So I'm going to have to do hot mic by myself. I have to say this. When I did the hot mic joke on the NRA show, I didn't have to match the picture. I've only got a limited number of hot mic photos, so I have to kind of tell a backstory for the photo. It's much easier and much quicker, by the way, for me just to say hot mic can't make it. He's in the mud baths today. I tried to I've been working a lot with Grok as an image thing. Really like it. I asked Grok. I spent about an hour with Grok before I went to Texas, trying to see if it could get my face. It doesn't know me from the internet. And even when I uploaded pictures, it just couldn't do my face. The great thing about that is that I could say, Grok, I need a picture of me covered in mud. Then I could do the mud bath thing and get out of it, because I'm taking too long to set up that hot mic thing, and we're losing people at the opening. Scott Ott said, if you've got a serious hot mic, he said you should probably just drop the hot mic gag completely. I'd like to keep it, but he's right. I can't spend 30 seconds on something and lose a lot of people. Although I do really like the running joke aspect of it, so we'll see. Right now I need to find, and there are a number of apps out there that I haven't touched. There are apps that that will let you do that kind of thing. You upload a couple pictures of your faces. Well, the hot mic pictures I've had so far, I just gave it a photograph of me, and then it did a bunch of them, made me much younger and much better looking, if such a thing is possible. And so I need to find a couple more apps and get some pictures. If I can find an app that'll take my face and let me describe the scene, and I'm sure there's a bunch of them out there, then our hot mic problem is fading. Brian Woodbridge with a super chat. Do you think we need rotating artificial gravity to endure the long trip in low G to Mars? Effects on the heart muscles, etc. I'm not aware that Musk or NASA or anybody else seems to be talking about it. There's no plan to do it on the Starship, obviously. The you could dock them nose to nose and spin them that way, and then the gravity would work. Down would be down with both of those. There's a lot of issues to that, Brian. If you want to bring that question back on Monday on our pop culture show, I could go into more detail about that. I don't really have the time to do it right at this second. As we go sit in a psychiatrist's office, and so Bill, is Hot Mike in the room with you now? Just because we've never been seen together doesn't mean he's not real. So we'll see. But I'd love to take the centrifuge question, Brian, and thank you for the super chat. It's a complicated issue, the guts of which have to do with the fact that you've got to get people's heads, their physical heads, far away from the center of rotation. Otherwise, it's 0G at the brain and 1G at the feet, and that make you kind of nutty. Sad Wings Raging with a super chat says, looking forward to a history of communism in Hollywood video by Bill. Now's the time to strike that hot iron. Okay, I will keep that in mind. So we'll see. Bob Neef. This goes back to about 3 news cycles, so that's 6 days ago, from a pop culture perspective. That's the nicest compliment I've ever had. Got him Coach 23 says, my hair looks like the Calvin peeing. And I can see it, man. I can see it. Now I can't unsee it. Thank you. I'm scarred for life. I'll never, ever recover from that, Coach. I will never, ever, ever be able to go out on the town again. International Women's Day is March 8th, Saturday. I know most Americans are completely unaware of that, but believe it or not, it is a very, very big deal in Russia, much bigger than Valentine's Day. So Natasha and I are going out to our favorite place on Saturday, and I will not be able to look in the mirror anymore because all I'll see is Calvin peeing off at the top of my head, and my life is ruined. And thanks very much, I appreciate it, buddy. Baron, a great matter with the super chats. Just keep on coming. Maybe more exposure on live on X, then cut those clips off of it for people to see more on your X page. Lots of lesser content creators are getting traction with it. I had not spent any time on X since, I'm joking, buddy. I'm joking with you. I appreciate that. I have not spent any time on X until I started working with Grok. But once I started working with Grok, I thought, man, this new X is actually really cool in a way that I never thought Twitter was. Just cool looking and stuff. No, Bill's not doing any fedoras. I did my skinny tie thing, and I loved it, but you get that. So yes, there is word that Elon was planning or is planning to turn X into a kind of a YouTube, and if that world ever happens, then all bets are off. So back to Bob Neef. The Zelensky meeting. It seems to me that after listening to several conservative commentators as well as the full news conference that Trump and Vance were correct. However, for the average American watching the 10-second sound bits only, the optics were not good. It made Zelensky look picked on by 2 bullies. Should Trump have shut it down sooner? When I showed it to Natasha, let's recall she's Russian, and this whole invasion has been acutely painful for her for many, many, many reasons, moral ones and the practical ones of the fact that she can't go back and see her mom or her daughter, and neither can I, for that matter. Yes, I agree. The optics were not good. I think Trump and Vance were justified, but on some level it should not have gone off the rails that way. One of the things that I heard after the fact, this was from Marco Rubio. Rubio put up a fantastic defense of Trump. I'm really impressed with Marco. Very, very impressed. I've never, ever, 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 ever seen the State Department back a Republican or a conservative president before. It's always been, digging in their heels against whatever the conservative president wanted. And Rubio put up a fantastic, spirited defense of Trump. But one of the things that Rubio said was that prior to the 50-minute meeting in front of the cameras, he said there was a 20-minute meeting where every single person was in their place. They just hadn't let the press in yet. And Rubio said, we spent 20 minutes before we let the press in talking about everything that was going to happen. We were going to have a conversation about this. It was going to be an upbeat conversation. We weren't going to do any persuasion or legislation or litigating the issues. It was going to be isn't this going to be great news for Ukraine and America? And the second that the press came in, Zelensky started to litigate through the media, which is what he's gotten very good at, or at least gotten very used to. And that added more fuel to the thing. But for people who haven't seen that stuff, and look, there's still some power that the mainstream media has, and that is the power to edit. It did look, well, when I showed it to Natasha, she didn't think it was a good look. But I think probably the most important comments are from people who are saying, look, you get the peace deal, and nobody remembers this. If you get the deal, nobody remembers this. I did the Churchill thing on it. That was my first take on it. Was Zelensky? Some people had took exception to me calling him not only a former comedian but a vaudevillian. But if you've ever seen him doing his dancing before he became president, it's not terribly dignified stuff. And my first reaction was when Churchill needed something from America. Churchill, this entire hot mic. If there was ever a person in the world who had a right to stand on dignity and say, I am not going to go crawling to the President of the United States, it's the Prime Minister of Great Britain, which at the time was the most powerful nation in the world. When the U.S. entered World War II, our army was 16th behind Portugal in terms of size and strength and materiel. So my entire point was, if Churchill could put his ego aside and come in essentially hat in hand as a supplicant and be optimistic, pleasant, make friends with Roosevelt, flatter him if he had to, Churchill did it because his country's future was at stake. And so is Zelensky's. And to me, that means that Churchill was orders of magnitude better man because he had so much further to go from his position to essentially being a supplicant. And that's what Zelensky is. He's a supplicant. He's had the Europeans buttering him up and the left buttering him up for so long that it's impossible for any human being to resist this. And to be fair to the man, and I want to be fair to him, the amount of pressure he's under, because he has been stalked for 3 years by KGB, FSB, Spetsnaz assassination squads, and he doesn't have anything like the kind of protection that Trump or Elon Musk has. So it can. I don't see how it doesn't completely screw you up. But in any event, I see. Trump said, when you're the end of your question is, should Trump have shut it down sooner? But Trump said something really telling. He said, "See, I let this go on as long as I did because I wanted the American people to see this." So I think on some level, there were reports that Joe Biden was screaming and yelling at how intransigent Zelensky could be. So I think on some level, Trump really needed Trump needed Zelensky to know that he's not in any position to dictate terms. So was it a slap in the face? Yes. And sometimes people need a slap in the face. That used to be a trope in Hollywood. Snap out of it, oh, thank you. And they'd always say thank you. Smack the shit out of somebody. Sorry. Smack the heck out of somebody. And the first thing was, oh, thank you. So anyway, there's that. So moving on, we got a Jacob Belchek, we got a Capital G Geek, we got George Freeland, we got Eric Blake, we got Ray Juarez. I'm not going to be able to do the other Marisha. and I don't want to cut him short. I'm going to see if I can speak him up here. Jacob Belchek, hail Bill. I know you've spoken passionately in defense of NATO in the past. Consider the following and render judgment. I've got a few things to say about this now, but let's see what the question is. Virtually every NATO nation, of course, except ours, has failed to meet its defense spending obligations for years, if not decades. Many nations in NATO seem to have given up the fundamental values of Western civilization, as sharply noted by Vice President Vance, who I love more every time I see him on camera. What a contrast between Vance and Mike Pence, but I digress. With the behavior NATO has been displaying, watching their defense deals, abandoning free speech, and engaging in civilization-altering scales of immigration, I have to ask, has NATO outlived its usefulness? How much are we obligated to defend, finance, and subsidize a bunch of ungrateful European fops from Russian consumption? And yes, I include Canada here. Putin may be evil, but I doubt he's feeding Russian women and young girls to Islamic grooming gangs and making himself feel virtuous. What say you? I want to, well, first of all, while my position, my final position on NATO remains the same, being a strong supporter of NATO, there are two things that need to be said. First of all, there was a lot of nuance in my position that I didn't get a chance to talk about, and secondly, I have changed my position on. I would not have defended NATO in the same way I defended it before, although you know what? Yes, I would have. So let me see if I can parse this out for you guys. All of the arguments that I made in favor of NATO still stand. The genius of the United States is its ability to create alliances. That is what protects us from being, if you'll pardon the expression, a one-term global power. Just real quick, Mickey McGeeth in the YouTube comment section says, where are questions being posted this evening? Mickey, we have a members supported, BillWhittle.com supports all of the shows through membership. And one of the very few benefits that we are able to give to members is that they get to ask questions on the members-only forum on BillWhittle.com. So occasionally I'll grab something from the comment section, but this is the least we could do. Okay, so back to the NATO thing. When I saw Vance's speech, I ended up coming down virtually exactly where Vance is. Vance did not say we don't need NATO. Vance said, on the contrary, no, this is an incredibly powerful alliance. I like that term, by the way, which I just came into my head, and that is this idea of America being a one-term world power. I don't want to be a one-term world power. I'd kind of like to be a perpetual world power for as long as America's America, and America was getting pretty far away from being America, and Europe was and remains a long way away from being Europe. When I did the Churchill thing, there was a comment in the comment sections, one of the first ones in there, that really, really affected me. And it was basically from a British citizen saying, all right, we're done with you, America. We supported you and bled with you during 9/11. We went into wars with Afghanistan and Iraq under your leadership, which turned out to be catastrophe for us. Lots of British blood was shed defending America. And this orange traitor is the last straw for many of us in Europe. We're just completely done with you. And I wanted to respond to that, but I was about to get on the airplane. My first response was relatively petty, but also, well, it came from an emotionally defensive place, but it's not a petty argument. My first response I did not respond to him, but my first response would have been, okay, first of all, I'm half British, so this is a difficult conversation among friends, which you have to have in close relationships over time. But if you want to play the blood card and talk about the British soldiers that died during the War on Terror, I don't know how many British soldiers it was, but I know it was less than 4,000 because we lost 4,000. That is a relatively paltry price to repay, considering the hundreds of thousands of Americans that were killed in World War I. In a European war, and the hundreds of thousands of Americans that were killed in World War II European theater in a European war. So you don't get to the record books, the ledgers are not in Britain's favor when it comes to the number of lives lost for an ally. Number of Americans that have died for Britain is enormously higher enormously, enormously, enormously higher than the number of Brits that have died for America. Enormously. And that doesn't include, of course, the revolution in the War of 1812. So, speaking as one friend and ally to another, that's the first thing that I noticed. The second thing that I noticed is you may feel that we are beginning to renege on an obligation, and we do have an obligation because when Ukraine turned in their nuclear weapons, Bill Clinton guaranteed their security. But what I wanted to say to this guy was, you say you're done with Americans. Well, we're getting pretty done with you too. You know, we are tired of being your checkbook, and this attitude that the Americans will take care of it so we don't have to. We had to go and fight the war in Bosnia, which was in your backyard. This Ukraine war is a European war. This is not our war. This is a European war. We have done 3 times what all of Europe combined has done for a war in your backyard. That's offensive to us. It's offensive to us. And you should have no problem understanding that. If the situation were reversed, if we were asking the European Union and British taxpayers to pay 3 times what America was paying in order to deal with a situation of communism in Venezuela, let's say, you would be rightfully angry about it. We're kind of tired of being your chumps, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, we're really pretty badly offended by this. So if all of this is enough to make you say, well, maybe America doesn't have our back after all, I'm sorry that it came to that, but it should never have come to that in the first place because we were supposed to have each other's back. NATO was not supposed to be America will defend Europe while Europe sits there and spends its money on social programs, throws people who are protesting abortion in jail, allows unlimited immigration to the degree that they've destroyed their own societies, and this left-wing cabal that runs the European Union is not going to be paid for by conservative Americans anymore. We've had about enough of it. It's about time you guys stepped up, and you are not poor countries. You're not poor countries. You're rich countries. And one of the reasons you're rich is because we lifted you up out of the ashes with the Marshall Plan. And the second reason you're rich is because we have been paying for your frickin' defense so that you can have universal health care. So, if you want to get down to brass tacks about this, let's talk about brass tacks. And this is good. It's good that we're having this conversation. This is the conversation. This is the kind of fights that married couples get into every now and then because they have to. This is what happens when you decide that the relationship is important enough to fight for, because it is. So, we've been paying 3% of GDP. You've been paying 1.5% of GDP. When I look at Wikipedia, it's no longer true because Britain had the good sense to get out of the economic union, European Union. But for a decade or so, when you looked at world GDP, the number one world GDP belonged to the European Union. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? How the European Union gets to be the world's largest GDP, but when you go to the Olympics, there's not a European Union athlete. There's not a European Union seat on the Security Council. You get 2 seats on the Security Council. You get France and Britain. And so when it suits you to be independent countries, you're independent countries. When it suits you to be the European Union, you're the European Union. And we're getting a little tired of that sleight of hand as well. So make up your minds and decide whether you're a country or whether you're a federation. And that means, I saw earlier just before the show. It was a letter from a guy to a Belgian ambassador saying he was apparently a Belgian citizen, I think. And he basically wrote an open letter to the Belgian ambassador: do not deal with the United States anymore. They're just a bunch of ingrates and unreliable allies and all the rest of it. And I sat there and I thought, well, where the hell are the Belgian troops? Where's the Belgian armor in Ukraine? I don't see Belgian taxpayers forking up, billions of dollars. And you've got billions of dollars, by the way, Belgium. You've got the billions of dollars. It's not that you don't have it. So for you to say, America's unreliable and we can't trust them anymore, it's like, what? You've basically taken advantage of us for 40 years now. Why don't you take some of the money that you save by not paying for your defense and allowing us to defend you? Why don't you take all that money and make a big donation to Ukraine? Why don't you donate $50 billion? Just 50, just 50. You can do that. Why don't you do it? They don't. So there's a much bigger issue here. I've heard Steve. I want to say what's his name? Dr. Steve. His name just flew right out of my head. And I've especially heard Sargon of Arcad talking about this, basically saying that the world is changing, that the left-wing order of the world, the left-wing universalist globalist order, this idea that we can be ruled by bureaucrats is over. It's failed. It's failed. And Steve Turley, thank you. I was going to say Garvey. It's failed. And you are Steve Brule, Dr. Stephen Brule. Thank you, Marcia. That was necessary. So return your countries to their people, and start playing ball. They are terrified. They are so terrified that the German, was it the defense minister who cried after, broke down in tears, couldn't finish, got a standing ovation. I feel that our values are no longer, and all the people at the Munich conference, oh, he's so brave, he's so brave, he's so brave. He's the defense minister of Germany. He's weeping like a baby in front of everybody, and he's weeping because the gravy train is looking like it might be over. We get to have a strong and powerful defense, and we don't have to pay for it. That's a pretty convenient thing. And by the way, going back to that whole, we supported you in the war on terror, I also noticed that the Muslims decided not to just limit their attacks to the United States. It's not like the war on terror only benefited the United States and didn't benefit Europe and France and Germany. You're the ones who are suffering most of the Islamic attacks, and you're the ones where those jihadis who were killed in the sands of Iraq would have gone if they hadn't. And we basically led that fight in terms of money and blood as well. So, not impressed by any of those arguments, and if this is what you needed to hear, if it had to get to this point for you to pick up your own responsibility, then I'm sorry, If this is what it took for you to realize that you need to live up to your own obligations, then this is what it took. But we've been feeling this for 25, 30 years at least now, and you've been taking advantage of it since the charter began in 1946, if memory serves. So, that's getting to be 75, 85 years, 80 years. That's a long time to be riding for free. So, yes, we don't like being taken advantage of the way you have taken. It's not that you might take advantage of us. You've taken advantage of us for 4 generations. Number one. Number two, we don't like the fact that you are a bureaucracy, that the unelected bureaucrats are telling your member citizens what to do. We don't like the fact that a German town of 250 people has to take 500 Algerians, or whatever the case may be. We don't like it, because we are a country that represents, that is founded on the idea that people can rule themselves. We're the only country in NATO founded on that idea. You might be able to sneak Iceland into that, maybe, but that's it. All the rest of you are coming from kings and queens and emperors and all of that. So this idea that the European Union is a reestablishment of the aristocracy, where you can tell your own people how many chickens they owe you before they can go on with their lives, is anti-freedom, and we entered this alliance to protect freedom. And if it turns out that European countries are going to be so left-wing and so totalitarian and so irresponsive to the desires and needs of their own people, then what the hell are we defending? This is exactly what Vance was saying. What are we defending here? It's not a question of we know what we're opposed to, but what are we protecting? The Europeans are terrified they're the European bureaucrats, not the European people. The European bureaucrats are terrified, and and he and Trump scares the living daylights out of them, and not just Trump, the entire phenomenon, because they know that there is a make a Britain great again movement, and make a France great again movement, and make a Germany great again movement, which would be Gaga, um, or Magaga. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't really work that way, but they should call it Gaga anyway. Um, so all of this to say, NATO is critically important, and the fact that the United States has bases in something like 160 countries around the world is our great strength. It's not our greatest strength. I'm not saying diversity is our greatest strength, but I'm saying it is an enormously powerful strength. If we have to really go toe to toe with China, it's beginning to look more and more like the Navy will not be able to carry the bulk of the work. It's going to take mass air power from land bases which can't be sunk by hypersonic missiles. There's a lot more to that in terms of dispersing forces, and we talked about that briefly, but you get the idea. The fact that we have bases around the world, that American Air Force bombers can strike any place on the world, is basically our greatest strength. So yes, I support NATO 100%. NATO is the greatest alliance in the history of the world and has kept the peace for 80 years. Okay? And it's important, but NATO needs to be a partnership and not an ATM. And the people of Europe are not pleased with the bureaucrats that are running the European Union. Asa Findi wrote something which I cannot agree with more. NATO, yes. The UN, no. We should have been out of the UN 30 years ago. The second that we started letting Cuba be in charge of human rights and Iran be in charge of enforcing equal rights for women is when we should have left the UN. The UN was a beautiful idea, but it was a utopian idea. The idea of the UN was that the UN would lift all of these savage nations up to the level of civilized nations, and all it did was create a world where the savage nations could vote the civilized nations back down to their level. That's all the UN ever became. I'm glad that the EU is scared. And as soon as Zelensky finished with the meeting in the Oval Office with Trump, he ran to Europe, where he was kissed and hugged, and Great Britain made an immediate pledge of $2 billion, which is $2 measly billion for air defense. Okay, pony up $300 billion. You want to impress me? That'll impress me. And by the way, and this needs to be said here, guys, we're not talking about an attack on a NATO ally, because if this had been an attack on a NATO ally and they'd invoked Article 5, is it? Then we would be in this to the hilt. All this criticism about America not living up to its obligations, we don't have any obligations. It was if this had been a NATO country that had been attacked, we'd have obligations. And so would the rest of you. But this isn't even a NATO partner that was attacked. Essentially, we're doing this not just out of the kindness of our heart. We're doing this because we understand what happens when you let aggression go unopposed. And one thing that I tried to make clear in the Friends and Allies hot mic is put aside the fact that we put in $350 billion and Europe put in $400 billion, or we put in whatever number you want to come up with, the U.S. 200. I don't care. It's irrelevant to me. We put in more than Europe. But the amount of money that we put in Ukraine has destroyed Russia's offensive capability for 2 generations. 2 generations. Okay, it doesn't have a Black Sea fleet anymore. It doesn't have an air force anymore. None of their frontline Su-57 felons were ever seen, because they knew they'd get them shot down. There is no more armor. 10,000 dead tanks in Ukraine right now. All of their best troops are dead. Their Wagner group is gone, essentially. When Russia has to import North Koreans to defend Kursk, which is Russian territory, you know they're pretty much at the bottom of their barrel in terms of operations outside of Russia. If you attack Russia, then all of a sudden Russia is the same thing as if you attacked America. All of the Russian men that ran away from the war, because rightfully so, will come running home. But basically, offensively, there is no more Russia. The Soviet Union and Russia as this enormous conventional armor force that's in the East is gone. Gone. John Pershing says it should be noted how that the surviving Russians are much more competent now. Well, in the same way that we learned so much irreplaceable combat experience in Afghanistan and Iraq and the Gulf War, yes, they're learning, but there's nothing left. Their tanks, their Armada tanks, never even made it into the fight. They're completely useless. And we did more than destroy the Russian military. We destroyed their reputation. They're done. For generations done. There you go. The Rough Ryan says, Bill, here's a question for you. If push comes to shove, why doesn't Russia just put a nuclear dead zone along their entire European border, and then they can call it good for the next 1,000 years? You mean like a radioactive zone like Chernobyl? Well, first of all, Europe is a tiny little place, man. They don't have a whole lot of room there between the hedgerows. One of the things that shocks Europeans, and I guess shocks Americans too, it shocked me actually, when I went to England to visit my grandfather in 1976. He said, "Is there anywhere you really like to go?" And I'm looking, he laid out this map of the British Isles. Is there anything you'd really like to see, Bill? I said, well, to be honest with you, Granddad, one thing I'd always really want to see would be Stonehenge, but that's like halfway across the country, you know? And he said, yeah, well, we'll get on a train, we'll be there in an hour and a half, 2 hours. Oh, jolly good. So that's what we did. So anyway, yes, needless to say, this is not the same speech I gave a couple months ago when I was talking about defending NATO, although none of the points I made then change. We need NATO. NATO is good for America, if for no other reason than it keeps all the other European countries on the same side. You know, that's where World War I and World War II came from. So there's that. But it's in America's interest to be the leader of the world, and NATO is a very effective thing. And by the way, let's not forget that NATO doesn't just apply to Russia. It applies to anybody. NATO doesn't say if a NATO ally is attacked by the Russians, then we all have to go to war. If China attacks the United States can invoke. Now all of a sudden, China's at war with the world, in the immortal words of Norm Macdonald. So it's American leadership and diplomacy, leadership through soft strength, right? We don't when people of a nation don't want those bases there anymore, we leave. As I pointed out in the hot mic thing, we left Bermuda. We had Bermuda as of the least territories that we had in Lend-Lease. We got in exchange for lending them 50 old destroyers. We got 99-year leases on 8 British Empire territories. And the one that we kept the longest by far, twice as long as the others, was Bermuda, which turned everything over in 1995. Just gave everything back. 52 years or whatever it was, 53, 54, something like that. So, look, alliances are good to have, man. And if for no other reason, then they allow us places to forward base our military. We are on the other side of the oceans, which is nice on a defensive point of view. But from an offensive point of view, if you want to go fight somebody, it's nice to have an unsinkable aircraft carrier like Airfield 1. That's a damn handy thing to have, that Great Britain. I would like Great Britain. We do have a special relationship with Great Britain, and no matter how far Britain goes to the left, we will always have a special relationship with Great Britain because it's our parent. That will never change. You can say that Great Britain is not Great Britain anymore, or not even England anymore, and there's a lot of truth to that. But the fact is, there is a special relationship between among the Anglosphere. It's not just Great Britain. It's Canada, Great Britain, the United States, New Zealand, Australia. And we'd be fools to throw that away, because it's a birthright issue. We'd be fools. But we'd also be fools to pay for everybody else while they just sit back and, drink their bloody tea. So there you go. Baron of Grey Matter with the Super Chat says, how is NATO effective? They have zero militaries and zero industry energy. It is the Vandalian and broomsticks all over again. Their men have no will. Well, that's not entirely true. And it's not entirely true that they have no military force or effectiveness. As I just mentioned earlier, probably the most powerful Air Force base we have is Rheinland, right, in Germany, or at least certainly it was. There's an advantage to having bases there if they contribute nothing militarily, but they don't contribute nothing. They just need to contribute a lot more. So I'm with you on this one, Baron. If you think about it, if you look, just play. Anybody else besides me play Risk, right? Let's say you're Russia and you're playing a game of Risk, and you've got NATO as it exists now. That means that the attack vector into Russia can come from anywhere. Can come from Norway, can come from Turkey. It goes down the entire length of Russia's western flank. So it's a real valuable thing to have. And it's Ramstein's the big base now. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Thumper, the sweaty guy. Appreciate it. So, yeah, Rusha Dark says Europe is worth 5 armies. The risk strategy, for those of you who are interested, is take Australia. Take Australia. You only get 2 armies, but you take Australia and you build them up and build them up. You attack one country, come back, so that you get your cards. Attack and come back, come back. Build, 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 build. Attack, 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 attack. Build, build, build. Meanwhile, everybody else is fighting everybody else. Nobody's going after you. They know you're getting stronger, but your territory's not worth anything. You're just this little appendix. It's handing off on the side of the map. So you just stay in Fortress Australia. Attack and just attack the neighboring countries. Don't make a threat to anybody. Build, 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 build. Wait judiciously. And then when you've got a ton of armies, and I mean a ton of armies, and when they've bled themselves white going after each other, then you make the play for the American Triangle. That's the win. The American Triangle is you take Australia, Iceland. Technically, you should take, Kamchatka, because that breaks up the Asia color thing. You take Iceland, which breaks up the Europe color thing. And then you take Mexico, whatever south of you build a 3-point army on the United States, but you put your forces in their color group so they don't get the color group, and then you build, and then you take South America. Now you got a 2-point defense, 3-point defense. You got an Alaska defense, you got an Iceland defense, you got a Brazil defense. Build these suckers up, build. And just launch raids into Africa from Brazil, or raids into Europe, or raids into Asia. Just keep collecting those cards, man. Build, become unbeatable, and then just lightning strikes. Take a guy out, get his cards, go back, sit behind Fortress Western Hemisphere, and then victory is yours. I love that game. I've played 10 hours of Risk, at least 10 hours of Risk, at a stretch. Yes, so anyway, I gave all that for free. Now I'm going to end up playing somebody when we finally do our convention, and I'm going to lose because I gave away the keys to victory. Okay, Capital G Geek. Greetings from the swamps of George Freeland, Eric Blake, Ray Wires. I'm going to do the 4 Marusha. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do 2 tonight. Capital G Geek. Greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia, swampiest land in the world, apparently. Things over the past few years have had me rethinking a lot of things, so I thought I'd share some of the first principles I've been reevaluating. Free trade. We've seen free trade abused by sending American jobs overseas and importing foreign labor, both legal and illegal, to the detriment of the country. Also, we do not apply tariffs to countries that apply tariffs to us. That should be automatic. Losing American jobs to foreign slave labor and simultaneously shrieking about low birth rate while importing foreigners seems un-American. Agreed. Free trade within the country, sure, but to other countries, shouldn't we be able to independently feed, clothe, medicate, and defend ourselves without needing help from foreigners? This is why the tariffs thing is very, very interesting. There's a time, and Steve Young AOC in the Twitch comment section, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only risk. So tariffs inhibit imports, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious. They make imports more expensive. If you're an exporting country, you don't want tariffs because it increases your cost of exporting things. But we are not an exporting country. We used to be, and when we were an exporting country, when American goods were going out to the whole world. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Well, thank you very much. That's very, very kind. When we were exporting things, then we don't want tariffs because we don't want trade wars. But since we are importing everything, it's true it makes the prices more expensive. But if Trump could find a way to have the external revenue service replace the internal revenue service, then the amount of money that we would have to spend on imported goods, including the price of tariffs, is unbelievable. So since we import more than we export by quite a lot, wow, gibberish number one in the YouTube section has found a way to get enormous red crosses, and those things grab your attention. The U.S. has become soft. Thank God for Trump. Amen. Couldn't agree more. Lord Bio says free trade works when commodity is at a parity between economies. Without parity, one side will benefit more than the other. So look, what Trump is basically saying is, and he's right about this with NATO, he's right about this with China, he's right about this with a lot of our trade partners. We have been the nice guy for the longest time. We've been getting boned. And we're kind of tired of it, had enough of it. So now we're going to start looking out for our interests. We're going to stop being, it's not that we're going to stop being Mr. Nice Guy. We're kind of built to be Mr. Nice Guy. It's just that we're not going to be Mr. Stupid Guy anymore. Peter Rossi says, but we have a Navy. Yes, we do. We have the Navy. Don't touch our boats. That's the most important thing. Don't touch our boats. So anyway, I think it's time to look seriously at tariffs, and if it makes international trade more expensive, that's probably to our benefit because we have such a trade deficit. It's unless I've misunderstood it. God knows I'm not a economist, although I do play one on the internet. So this America First thing. See, I think. I hadn't really fully realized this until just this moment. I think when foreigners hear America First, they think it means America above everyone else, America über alles kind of thing. America First doesn't mean America has to come first in the world. It just means that for America, America should be looking after its own interests ahead of other people's interests, which brings me to something I saw on Dr. Steve, I think it was. The difference between liberals and conservatives and how they value, where they place their value. Conservatives, I didn't see the article, but if I remember this correctly, put yourself at the middle of a bullseye and then draw a ring around it. So you're the middle. That's you. Around you is your immediate family. Around your immediate family is your extended family. Around them is your group of friends. Around them is your group of acquaintances. Around them is everybody in your country. I'm skipping several steps here. Around that is everybody in the world. Around everybody in the world are all the mammals in the world, then all of the animals in the world, then all of the living life forms, including parameciums and insects in the world, and then there's everything in the universe. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically it. Conservatives put their resources and their sympathies and their emotions at the center. We care most about our immediate families. This is conservatives. And then after that, we care about our extended families, and after that, we care about our friends, and after that, we care about our acquaintances, and after that, we care about our country, and after our country, we care about other countries, and after other countries, we care. So we have our interests and our passion and our dedications, our loyalties, all of that in the center. When they do the same map for liberals, they find exact opposite. They have nothing but contempt for their own kind. Liberals will put the benefit of like vegans, for example, will put animal rights above the rights of their own children. And it's insane, but that's how they map their values, which is, and they've tried to force this on us for the last 40 years, which is basically essentially what wokeism is. It's to break your loyalty to your immediate family and to your immediate friends and make your loyalty to people you not only don't know, but are as much unlike you as possible. That's their value system. They're oikophobes. They have a fear of the familiar. It's the opposite of xenophobia, oikophobia. Xenophobes fear the other, the different, the external, and oikophobes fear and despise the familiar. And that's what progressives are. And it's batshit crazy. It's just absolutely nuts. And Marusha Dark says it's the same thing as collective versus individual, top-down versus bottom-up, all that stuff. So Clark Unglued says, like Joe Rogan, I'm on Team People. I'm on Team People too. And that's the problem with the European Union. They're not on Team People. This is a Team People revolution going on around the world, starting in America. It's glorious. Glorious. That's the value system. And when we say America first, we don't mean America has to come first at the expense of all of the nations in the world. It just means that America should be making decisions that benefit America first, in the same way that Belgians should be making decisions that benefit Belgium first. I'm not even sure Belgium's a real country, but I did hear about it. I read about it once in a magazine. So anyway, there's that. George Freeland, and then Eric Blake, and then Ray Suarez. George Freeland, is the office of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States the worst place on earth to put a coward? Brother, I feel your pain. You could make a very compelling case for that, George, that if there was ever a position in the constitutionally mandated U.S. government, then the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court is the place where you need moral courage more than, well, I would argue that you probably need it more in the presidency. But you know, yes. The number of times that John Roberts has said, he's concerned about what history will say about his court is disqualifying as far as I'm concerned. That's another thing that nobody's really talking about right at this moment, and that moment that moment is I can just address something I just saw. Baron of Grey Matter said, so if the EU is not on Team People, then why are we in NATO? And Marusha says, yes. Well, they're not completely off of Team People, but chances are good they're going to get back on Team People. And once you break it, you can't reassemble it. You know, look, ultimately, you know who's responsible for America's getting bilked by NATO? You know who's ultimately responsible for this? We are. We're the ones who are responsible for this. This is our responsibility. If somebody keeps offering to buy you lunch, right? And they keep offering to buy you lunch, and you keep accepting, and then they start to build up this resentment about you buying, about them buying you lunch all the time. Whose fault is that? Right? I mean, it's our fault. So I'm not going back to the NATO thing, but to say that, look, Europe and the United States are having a lot of divergence now, and we've always been different. But compare Europe to the rest of the world, it's as close as it gets, man. I mean, inside every European is an American struggling to get out. Just think about that. Just think about that. That was just too much fun. I just really enjoyed it. Yes, George, the Supreme Court could use somebody much better than that. Oh, sorry about that, Merja. The Dread Pirate Roberts, yeah. So, anyway. Well, here's the heat maps. Oh, there they are. There's the whole thing. I'm going to do an actual firewall on this. Here's the link. I'll put the link in YouTube. This is fascinating. Baron of Grey Matter says, stop the abuse. I'm a cold warrior. I lived all that crap, man. Even in the 1970s, German soldiers said they wouldn't fight if Russia came. That's depressing. Well, I'm a cold warrior too. Although, let me take that back. That's not true. That's actually practically stolen valor. No, I am a historian who believes that the Cold War not only needed to be fought, but was fought about as well as it could be fought. Yes, Ted Cruz would make an excellent Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Okay, I'm going to bookmark this, because this heat map in the links that I just pointed out is phenomenal. Really phenomenal. Jason Horner says its U.S. aid to Ukraine is $120 billion. Europe, EU, and UK is $160. Other countries $21 through the end of 2024 from the Kiel Institute, not $350 billion. It's a pretty big discrepancy there. So I'd like to see a second source on that, but if that number is correct, then that number is correct. But I suspect it's probably a little more sophisticated than that. I may be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. I've always been willing to be wrong. Somebody put down some evidence there, and if somebody has counter evidence, I'd like to see it. But I can't do everything at once here. So, in any event, the United States is paying a huge amount of money for a war in Europe that is not a NATO obligation. So I don't see how you get around that. There's the heat maps. Yeah, it's interesting. The $350 billion is the total of all bills that include Ukraine. Oh. Okay. That's interesting. Of that, $183 billion was appropriated to Ukraine, but you just said that but you just said Ukraine aid was $120 billion, and here you say it's $183. Because in your super chat it says U.S. Ukraine aid is $120 billion, and then you go on to say of that $183 billion was appropriated to Ukraine. So, which is it? In any event, I'm over the topic. The numbers don't materially affect the argument, although I'd like to be right about the numbers. And thank you for the heat map on this. Oh, he's getting to it. Okay, so it's great to have people who care about getting things right. Okay, let me get back to these questions because I got to get out of here. We got Eric Blake, and then we got Ray Juarez. Says, you may know, Bill, Tuesday's State of the Union rebuttal was done by Elise, what's-her-face from Michigan. And lo and behold, she had the unmitigated gall to lecture that Reagan would never approve of XYZ. Yeah, like she knows what Reagan would approve of. Well, sweetheart, when Sam Donaldson asked the Gipper if any of the blame for the continuing recession fell on him, Reagan replied, yes, because for many years I was a Democrat. Seriously, Bill, what gives her the nerve to tell us what Reagan would do? She's a progressive. Um, uh, so this is just the same kind of cheap intellectual non-argument. Look, it's a version of this is if I were to declare myself a Democrat, right? Well, let's flip this. Let's say that I were to suddenly become a left-wing pundit. My value to the left would be for me to say, listen, I was a conservative pundit. I was a conservative champion. And I think conservatism is just nothing but cruelty and fraud. And they're the stupidest people I ever saw. Now, if a left-winger says that, it's just a left-winger. But if a conservative says that, then it has the value of apostasy, right? I was a conservative, but then I saw how wonderful liberalism is. And once I saw how awesome liberalism is, I became a liberal. That's basically what she's trying to do there. Your God, Ronald Reagan, would not have approved of these things Donald Trump is doing. The hell, you say? First of all, that's an assertion. It's just an assertion. And so, yes, I don't expect any less than that from them, Eric, because if they had real arguments, they'd deploy them. And if you don't have real arguments and you got time to fill, then you start doing these kind of, tricks and things of that nature. So, you get the idea. Last one for the night, because I'm not doing duplicates. Sorry, Marisha. Although it's a good question. I'm going to do this very, very quickly. I'll do the Marusha thing. Elon and Doge. I love it, Elon and Doge, but I would also like to see Elon go before the House Oversight Committee, if only to shut up the Democrats by running circles around them, particularly people like AOC. Not only do I think it'd be good optics for Doge to appear before the House Oversight Committee, I think it's essential, because otherwise absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yes, couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Take the teeth out of every argument they've got. Elon's saying he's getting rich off it. People are saying Elon's stealing. I think Elon should just come out and say, listen, here's how much money I've lost over the time that I've dedicated to Doge. I have 5 businesses to run. Now I've got this. It's taking up all my time. This is how many billions of dollars it's cost me, not that I've gained, it's cost me to uncover this theft. Yes, 100% think that's right. And I think he should sit there in front of senators and hostile Democrats and explain exactly what he's doing. Just lay it all out. And they don't want that because he would burn them. Burn them. Yeah. Okay, so last one for the night here from Ray Juarez. Hello, Sir William. Hello, Sir Raymond. Just checking in to see what progress you made with your creative endeavors. What have you been doing for story mechanics and other such silliness? How are Natasha and Bean? I hope his good days still outnumber the bad. How's your health? Thank you. My week was largely taken up by the trip to Dallas, which took me out on Sunday and brought me back on Tuesday night. Wednesday, we recorded the right angles for the week, and I edited those and put one of them up. The second one's going up at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I wasn't able to do much on story mechanics or anything else, the rest of it, but I do have tomorrow for that. Natasha is just fine, thanks. We did a link to her music earlier. Thank you very much for that, Exxon Petrolis here. And Bean has had a major rebound. He was spending all of his time on the bed, which was unusual for him. Now he's spending most of his time on the couch, which makes me very happy. This morning he woke me up by being beside the bed and howling that it was breakfast time and it was time for me to wake up, which I didn't think I'd see again. Tomorrow I'm going to have to go in and pick up another insulin thing for him. When he really started to come apart, I had 3/4 of a vial of insulin. And I, honest to God, did not think I would. I thought he'd leave and leave half a vial of insulin behind. But I got to get more insulin, so he's rallying. There's no. I mean, he's slowly losing weight, but he's rallying. He's not quite there personality-wise. But yeah, And so, like anything else on this nature, you know where this story is going to end, and any good day is a good day, and he's had a bunch of good days. So just seeing him walking from the living room to the kitchen, and is great, because there was 2-3 weeks there where he just did not get off the bed except to go to the cat box, and so I'm real happy about that. So thank you for your continuing. Everybody, not just you, Ray, but thank you all for your continuing concern about that. Natasha's doing well. We both had a bunch of medical checkups, and they all came back looking rosy. If you don't mind, I'm going to do it again for those who have joined us late. Let me go back to the actual channel page here. So 1 second. Oh, there it is. I mentioned at the very beginning of the show that my wife Natasha has gotten into, just sat down and opened up AI music software, and has put together a YouTube channel where she has 3 or 4 hour stints of music, sound effects, and pretty visuals, all of which she did, and that are great for calming down. If you have trouble sleeping, there's a lot of white noise in there, but it's more than just white noise. It's just beautiful music. And she's never done anything with music in her life, and she's got her YouTube channel. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put that in there one more time. We could use all the subscribers that we could get just to get this thing jump started. This is the first time it's ever been announced publicly, and we came into this at the beginning of the night with 3 subscribers, and now we've got 40. So if you don't mind, if you haven't subscribed and you're watching the show, and you've got a moment, we sure would appreciate it. All you have to do is just go hit the button. You don't ever have to go back again, although the music is really beautiful. And if you could do that, we'd really, really appreciate that. You can just head over there, just hit the subscribe thing, because that's what gets people to see the page in searches and stuff. So I'll put that up one more time now, up to 40 and climbing. There we go. And if you have a moment to listen to the music, it's great. But I don't remember the name of the AI software. I think we'll probably. It's Natasha's overdue for a trip to the Stratosphere lounge. She has not been on for way over a year. So maybe we can have her on next week or the week after and talk about the music and stuff. But we've got 4 uploaded. There's 2 that are finished. They're uploading now, and we can pretty much do. I think we could do 1 a day, except that I just can't keep up with her. She's just cranking this stuff out much faster than me. Eric says it's good for transcendental meditation. It's tonal music, so it's designed to basically get you out of your head and just kind of relax. I know when I play it, it knocks me right out to sleep, but to be fair, I fall asleep fairly easily. So again, thanks for that. And I think that'll do it for the show tonight, gang. So we're made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, who've been nothing but kind and gracious to us. I haven't been doing much with the shorts, Marusha. I should have done shorts from the Churchill thing, but I was on the plane, so I should probably do them for every right angle. I tend to want to save them, but that's kind of nutty. So I have not been employing the shorts nearly as much as I should. But thank you for the link to that, because that software is phenomenal, man. Absolutely phenomenal. So this show is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com, who keep the lights on and keep us going and pay for the new shirts here, which I like this one a lot, actually. It needs an ironing, but it's just cool. I like it a lot. It looks good. So it's going to be bowling shirts for the Stratosphere shows. It's going to be the new polos for Hot Mic, and then I've got long sleeve shirts coming in for Story Mechanics. Okay, that'll do it. All right, my guys, and my guys and my gals and guys and girls, thanks for joining us. We will see you later. YouTube, we'll see you guys on Twitch first, I guess. We'll see you guys on Monday night for Stratosphere Studio. Has some thoughts about Major Mace Mattingly that I'd like to get your feedback on, and we'll see you then for that. So good night, and we'll see you guys on Monday. And same for you over there on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks for all the super chats, all of you, and all the kind words, especially for Natasha and Bean and all the rest of it. Deeply, deeply appreciated. and we'll see you guys on Monday night as well.